Good morning. Let's try this again. I turned my Wi-Fi off. For some reason, it kept wanting to reconnect. So I just turned it off, and we'll go with just my cellular and see what kind of connection we have with that this morning. Good morning. Happy Thankful Thursday. And I missed you on Tuesday, but just couldn't quite muster up the strength for Tuesday. Thank you for your prayers and all the sweet comments. I am getting stronger every day. And God is good and God is faithful. And, that'll probably be the last thing. I hope it is, maybe. Maybe the last thing that I say before I leave this life. God is faithful. Because He is. You can count on Him in every situation. And I appreciate Him so much. I appreciate you this morning joining me. Let's see who's on here. Good morning, Shirley. Welcome to my front porch in Chelsea, Oklahoma. Welcome. I've got my coffee, and so hope you have something to drink. If you're not a coffee drinker, I've got friends that first thing in the morning they have their flavored water. And then I have a few like me that need their cup of coffee just to kind of get them going. But I'm going to get right into what I want to talk about this morning. I was sitting here thinking, did you ever give your children a task and tell them a specific way that you wanted them to do it? Something you wanted done. I want you to do this, and this is the way I want you to do it. You had your own reasons. It may not have made sense to them at the time. As long as I get it done, what does it matter how I do it? But you had a reason. You had an agenda for why you wanted something done a certain way. And they may not have understood. And Mom said, go feed the dogs. I don't know. I'm just thinking of something bizarre. And maybe Mom said, go give the dogs a cup of dry dog food each. And put a half a cup of water on top of it to moisten it up. I know I'm making that up. I don't feed dogs, as you can tell. And they thought, it really doesn't matter. So they just pick up the dog food bag and they pour some dog food in the bowl and they get a hold of something and they pour some water on it. And it ends up being a mess. But in their eyes, they fed the dogs. Whether they did it just the way you told them to do it or not, they fed the dogs. And that's, and so if they got in trouble later, but Mom, I fed the dogs. You did not do it the way I told you to do it. You said, okay, you're coming up with a real bizarre, example there. Well, that's because all I could think of off the top of my head. Because as you know, most things I say on the front porch are not pre-planned. They're not premeditated or pre-thought out. As I think of it, that's the way you get it. But I've wondered how many times God has told us to do something, and He's told us a specific way He wants us to do it. And all we paid attention to was the deed that He wanted done. And in our mind, in our eyes, our thoughts, as long as I do it, it doesn't matter how the job gets done. I remember as a teenager, and I remember as my kids being teenagers, how many times I told them to do something, and I told them how I wanted it to be done. And all they heard was what it was I wanted them to do. And that's all that mattered to them. Let's look at Numbers chapter 20 and begin reading in verse 8. And God is speaking to Moses here. And He says, take the rod and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water. Okay, I want to notice something here. The children of Israel were complaining and murmuring because they said, here, you brought us up into this wilderness, and our cattle are going to die because there is no place, there's no water to drink. There's no, we can't grow anything. There's no water. And so Moses and Aaron went and fell on their faces before the Lord. And this is what the Lord told Moses. Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye. Notice that word speak. Speak ye unto the rock before their eyes. There was going to be an audience watching them. It wasn't something that Moses was going to go out and do by himself. He said, take Aaron with you and all the congregation out there, and before their very eyes, I want you to speak to the rock. And when you do that, it shall give forth his water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink. God said, I'm going to do it. You don't even need to touch the rock. Wow, man. I don't want you to have any part in it, Moses, as far as touching the rock and bringing water out of it. All I want you to do, I don't know what he was supposed to say. Probably doesn't say, he just said, speak to it. Speak to the rock. I have no idea what it was that God wanted Moses to say. I'm sure Moses knew. And the congregation is going to see this. And they're going to see me. Whew. They're going to see me bring water out of the rock. Well, we know that what Moses did. He took the rod before the Lord as he'd commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. And he said unto them, listen to what he said. Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? In other words, I'm going to do it. Wow. And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice. And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beast also. Well, the end result was they got water. That's what they were after. You know, they asked for water, and God said, you'll get water. But Moses didn't do it God's way. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believed me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. This is what happens when God says, speak, and we strike. That's exactly what happened. God told Moses to speak to the rock. But in Moses's I'm sure he was a little bit frustrated with the people. He was just frustrated at the place that he was at with this group of people that God had him lead out of Egypt. I don't know that it was blatant disobedience. I don't know that it wasn't. You don't know if it was or it wasn't. But nevertheless, it was disobedience. You see, sometimes we disobey, and it's not blatant disobedience. It's just doing it our way. I always like to refer back to, I never listened to the song, but I grew up in the era when it was popular. I want to say it was Frank Sinatra. Yeah. Frank Sinatra said, I did it my way. That's really all I know of the song. I did it my way. And so many times, God gives us instructions, and all we hear is the end product. All Moses paid attention to was there was going to be water come out of the rock. And in his frustration, his aggravation, he just struck the rocks 2 times when God said, just speak to the rock. I wonder how many times in my life God said speak and I struck. Ouch. Because I was frustrated. I just wanted to get the job done. Let's just do this and get it over with. As long as we get water, who cares how we get it? God's going to give us water. He's not going to let all these people out here die of thirst after he's brought them out of Egypt. God, I know God. I know he always repents and he always does. He always provides. I know God's going to give them water. So who cares? I'm not in a talking... Oh, my goodness. As a parent. Oh, my word. Do you ever just feel like I'm not in a talking mood? Go to your room. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not in a talking mood. I'm not going to get into whether you're believing corporal punishment or not. You can ask my kids whether I did or not. And there were a lot of times, I will confess, that I struck, not out of anger, well, maybe sometimes, but out of frustration. As a mother with 3 children, and, you know, get frustrated when I really should have talked to them. It was easier just to pull out the paddle. Let's just get this over with. This ain't no talking about this. Sometimes that was necessary, needful, and it worked. But there were other times when speaking would have been more beneficial. Not ignoring the situation. I'm not saying that. But speaking and talking and discussing. My daughter, and I've talked about her before, and if you know my daughter, she's an amazing, amazing mother. Is she perfect? No. She's not perfect. I've never met any perfect mother out there. Not still, you know, walking around in flesh like we are. She's not perfect. But she is an amazing mother. Because my grandson is very challenging. And I've watched her when I would have struck, literally, I'd have warmed his britches. And most people would. Because of his challenges. And because of where he's at on the spectrum. my daughter has had the wisdom, instead of striking, to speak to him. Now, speaking doesn't mean yelling. I done a lot of that too. Yeah, I was a yeller, I'm afraid, sometimes. God told Moses, just speak to the rock. He got the same results by striking the rock that he would have gotten had he just spoke to the rock. But the consequences for his disobedience was, he says, because ye believed me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel. That word sanctify means to hallow me, to honor me, to reverence me in the eyes of the children of Israel. Because of that, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. And you know the rest, as Paul Harvey says. There goes the school bus. You know the rest of the story. Moses and Aaron did not get to go into the promised land. God did allow Moses to see it from afar. Took him up on a mountain, and he said, look over there. That's where you could be. Whew. I don't know. If I'd have been Moses, I might have thought, I don't even want to see it, Lord. I don't even want to see it. If I can't go there, just forget it. Just kill me. I don't want to see it. God says, no, I want you to see what you missed out on by your disobedience. And Moses saw what he missed out on. And he died. And God buried him. Nobody ever found his grave. Because God never wanted people to worship his grave and build a monument there. And they would have done that because they were very big worshipers of men. When God says, speak, don't strike. Don't strike when God says, speak. Man, wouldn't that be a great mantra for most of us to live by? For the world to live by? When God speaks to us and tells us to speak to someone, don't strike. Speak. And speak in love. Disobedience comes with a price. You say, but yes, they still got the water. Mm-hmm. They did. They still got the water. But Moses lost the promised land. Whew. That's pretty powerful. You may get the water and lose the promised land. I don't want to lose the promised land. I don't want to lose the promise. I want everything that God intends for me to have. And I want to do it God's way, not my way. I don't know what situation you're dealing with today. And maybe you don't really like God's way. You've heard me say this before. But I've done it. I've done it. And I guarantee you, you probably have too. I said, but Lord, don't you know? That's the stupidest thing to say right there. Of course he does. Lord, don't you know that if we did it this way, this would be the results. Well, that's what I think the results would be. But God knows. God's got a plan. You see, if Moses would have obeyed God and just spoke to the rock, he wouldn't have touched it. And God would have brought water out for the children of Israel. But Moses did his way. Phew. Be careful today. Be careful that you don't strike when God says, speak. You may get the end result. You may get water. But you may lose the promise. I don't want to lose the promise. I want the water and I want the promise. And I want to do it God's way. Well, God bless you this morning. And those are my rambling thoughts for today. And thank you for your prayers. And I'm continuing to rest today. And the Lord willing, I plan tomorrow to head to camp meeting. So you have a great weekend. Next week is going to be over the top. I'll share with you next week what God's going to do next week and what He's has given me the opportunity for. And so I got to get my strength. Got to get my strength back. And it's coming. And when God says, speak, I don't want to strike. God bless you. Have a great, great day and a great weekend. Find yourself in the house of the Lord this weekend and magnify His name. Come together with His people and lift Him up. God bless you. Have a great day. And the Lord willing, I'll see you back on Tuesday.